The Grolar Bear is not simply a blend of two great predators. It is a living puzzle, each piece borrowed from a parent designed for a different world. To understand why life is so difficult for the hybrid, we must examine its body, feature by feature, and ask what works and what fails. Let us begin with the polar bear. The polar bear is a master of the ice. Its body is long and lean, stretched to make swimming easier. Its paws are enormous, like natural snowshoes, spreading its weight across fragile ice and paddling efficiently through the sea. Beneath its thick white coat, a dense layer of blubber insulates it from freezing water. Every detail is shaped for one purpose, stalking seals across a frozen sea. The grizzly, by contrast, is built for versatility. Its shoulders are massive, muscles layered thick for digging roots or tearing apart logs. Its claws are long, curved tools, not just for catching prey, but for ripping through soil in search of food. Its fur is brown, coarse, and varied, blending into forests and meadows. Its diet spans berries, insects, carrion, fish, and mammals. Unlike the polar bear, which depends on one main food source, the grizzly thrives because it can eat almost anything. Now place these two blueprints together, and you have a Grolar Bear. Its coat is neither fully white nor fully brown. Instead, it is a pale cream, often with patches of darker hair. On snowy ground, it stands out as too dark. In forest shadows, it shines as too light. Camouflage, which helps both parents survive, is weakened in the hybrid. Its body is stockier than a polar bear's, but longer and leaner than a grizzly's. This in-between build leaves it disadvantaged. Too heavy to swim with polar bear grace, too light to deliver the raw power of a grizzly. The very muscles and bones that define its survival are caught in compromise. Its claws are another example. Longer than a polar bear's, shorter than a grizzly's. Not quite suited for digging, not quite perfect for swimming. Tools half made for jobs that demand specialization. And then there is the face. The Grolar's head is broad like a grizzly, yet its snout is elongated like a polar bear. Even its teeth show the divide, sharper and longer than a grizzly's, yet less specialized than a polar's. Each meal becomes a challenge, because the mouth is not perfect for one kind of hunting or the other. In nature, every adaptation is a story of trade-offs, but for the Grolar Bear, those trade-offs are sharper, harsher, and more dangerous. Let us follow the hybrid into its daily life. To see what these compromises mean in practice, imagine a Grolar Bear venturing onto sea ice. Here, a polar bear would wait patiently at a seal's breathing hole, white coat blending perfectly with snow, paw poised for the strike. The Grolar, however, stands out against the ice. Its creamy fur catches the eye of wary seals. Its paws, smaller and less suited for balance, make crossing thin ice more dangerous. It can try to hunt, but it fails more often than it succeeds. Hunger sets in. Now imagine the same bear on tundra or in boreal forest. A grizzly here would dig eagerly for roots, its claws tearing into the soil with practiced ease. The Grolar's claws are longer than a polar's, yes, but shorter and weaker than a grizzly's. Digging is clumsy. Energy is wasted. The meal is smaller. Again, hunger lingers. A river rushes with salmon. The grizzly thrives here, slapping fish from water with precision. The polar bear has no such skill, but it has no need. Seals are its prize. The Grolar stands at the edge, awkward, slow, neither as deft as the grizzly nor as patient as the polar. The fish escape more often than not. It is a life of near misses, of effort unrewarded. Predators in the wild walk a fine line between feast and famine. Specialists like the polar bear may starve when their narrow niche collapses, but when conditions are right, they excel. Generalists like the grizzly never reach such extremes. They find food almost anywhere. The Grolar is neither. It is not efficient enough for one world, nor flexible enough for the other. This problem extends beyond hunting. Consider climate itself. The polar bear's thick blubber and dense fur allow it to swim icy waters for hours. The Grolar inherits some insulation, but less. It tires more quickly, risks hypothermia sooner. In a warming Arctic, this may seem less dangerous, but as ice retreats further from land, the hybrids are forced to swim longer distances. Each mile is harder, each crossing more deadly. On land, the opposite occurs. Grizzlies shed their winter coats and thrive in warmer months. Grolars, with their heavier insulation, overheat easily. They pant, They slow, they struggle in the very conditions where a grizzly would flourish. Even their behavior is mixed. Polar bears are mostly solitary, each one covering immense ranges in search of seals. Grizzlies are solitary too, but tolerate others when food is abundant, especially at salmon runs. Hybrids inherit unpredictable behaviors, sometimes avoiding others, sometimes wandering too close. Biologists note that their patterns are inconsistent, another sign of compromise in a world that rewards clear strategies. And what of reproduction? Hybrids often face infertility, yet Grolar bears can breed successfully, both with each other and back with parent species. On the surface, this seems like an advantage, but the very rarity of encounters makes it difficult. The hybrid lives in a narrow overlap zone, where numbers of each species are already thin. Finding a mate becomes another gamble stacked against survival, so the Grolar bear lives a life of difficulty. It struggles to hunt like a polar bear, fails to forage like a grizzly, overheats in summer, chills in the water, and blends poorly into every landscape. It is a creature asked to master two worlds and yet belonging to neither. But this struggle is not just physical. It is ecological. Every species occupies a niche, a place in the grand web of life. Polar bears anchor the Arctic by controlling seal populations. Grizzlies shape forests and rivers through their foraging. The Grolar bear, its role is uncertain. It does not fit cleanly into the system. Ecologists wonder, will it disrupt the balance further? Or will it vanish, leaving barely a trace? What is clear is this: survival is harder for hybrids not because they are weak, but because the world they inherit is broken. When the Grolar bear stumbles across tundra, when it dives awkwardly for food, when it misses more often than it succeeds, it tells us something about ourselves. It tells us that we are forcing specialists and generalists into unnatural overlap, that we are making the margins of survival thinner, sharper, and crueler. The Grolar bear is not failing because of what it is. It is failing because the stage upon which it lives is collapsing beneath it, and yet, for all its hardship, it persists. It endures, a living reminder that nature will try to adapt. Even under pressure it was never meant to face. Its anatomy is compromise, its survival constant struggle. But its existence is testimony to change, to resilience, and to the cost of a warming world. The story of the Grolar bear does not end with its body. It expands outward to the world that created it, a world where ice disappears, forests stretch northward, and humanity's shadow falls across every landscape. This is where the Grolar's story turns from biology to climate, from anatomy to crisis, from the question of what it is to the question of why it exists at all. The Grolar bear is more than an unusual hybrid. It is a message written in fur and flesh, a warning from the Arctic itself. To understand its struggle, we must look beyond the bear, to the world that created it, a world reshaped by climate change and scarred by human hands. The Arctic is warming faster than anywhere else on Earth. Temperatures rise, glaciers retreat, and the sea ice, lifeblood of the polar bear, melts into open water. Where once a frozen ocean stretched to the horizon, now lies a fractured mosaic of drifting flows. For the polar bear, this is disaster. Without ice, there are no seal hunts. Without seal hunts, there is no survival. The grizzly, meanwhile, thrives in change. Warmer seasons bring longer plant growth, new prey, and rivers rich with salmon. Expanding north, the grizzly marches into territory where it has never walked before. To the grizzly, a warming Arctic is not a threat. It is an invitation. It is here, on the edges of shrinking ice and growing forest, that the two worlds collide. And it is here that the Grolar bear is born. But climate change does not merely push them together. It traps them both. Consider the polar bear again. A master of sea ice, it is forced to swim farther as the ice retreats. Some bears are recorded swimming over 60 miles without rest. Many drown, their bodies never found. Mothers lose cubs along the way. For a species that depends on conserving energy, these journeys are deadly. The grizzly, though stronger on land, faces its own trials. The north may seem abundant, but ecosystems here are fragile. Food is seasonal, and winters, though shorter, remain harsh. Grizzlies that venture too far north find prey scarce and conditions uncertain. Their survival is not guaranteed either. The Grolar Bear inherits both worlds, but not their strengths. It cannot swim with polar endurance, nor forage with grizzly efficiency. In a changing climate, every weakness is magnified. Climate change is not a distant problem for these bears. It is the ground beneath their feet, the water around their bodies, the air they breathe. Each year the ice breaks earlier, each year the forest pushes further north, each year the overlap of ranges increases. With it, so too do encounters between grizzlies and polar bears. Hybrids are no longer rare accidents. They are becoming symbols of a new ecological reality. Yet, this story is not only about climate, it is also about us. Humans cast a long shadow across the Arctic. Our industries drill for oil beneath frozen seas. Our ships carve paths through once inaccessible waters. Our pollution lingers in the fat of whales, seals, and bears. Even the Grolar Bear, born in remote tundra, carries traces of chemicals and plastics in its body. Hunters, too, play their role. The first Grolar Bear identified was not found by scientists, but by a hunter's bullet. Each year, bears are shot for sport or culled when they wander too close to human settlements. Hybrids, rare and striking, draw attention, sometimes celebrated as trophies, sometimes dismissed as freaks. Their survival depends not only on nature, but on our choices. Tourism brings further change. Cruise ships glide through the Northwest Passage, once locked in ice. Travelers flock to see polar bears, often disrupting their natural behavior. Hybrids, when sighted, become curiosities, photographed, studied, and sometimes harassed. In the age of human dominance, no creature is too remote to escape our influence. And yet, there is another side to human impact. The question of conservation. Should we protect the Grolar Bear? Conservationists face a dilemma. Resources are limited. Polar bears are already endangered, their numbers shrinking as ice vanishes. Should we focus on saving them, the specialists of the North? Or should we acknowledge the hybrid as the future, redirecting efforts toward preserving its fragile lineage? Some argue the Grolar is nature's adaptation, a potential survivor in a changing world. Others argue it is a distraction, a symptom of crisis rather than a solution. To protect the hybrid is to admit that the parent species may be lost. It is a choice not just of science, but of philosophy. Beneath this debate lies a deeper truth. Hybrids exist because of us. Climate change, driven by human industry, forced polar and grizzly bears into contact. Habitat destruction, pollution, and hunting added further pressure. The Grolar Bear is not an accident of nature. It is a mirror, reflecting our impact back to us. Every struggle the hybrid faces, every missed hunt, every overheated summer, every drowned crossing traces back to the world we have made. And yet, despite these challenges, the Grolar persists. It breeds, it raises cubs, it roams the tundra. Its existence is fragile, but it endures. In that endurance lies a paradox. The hybrid may outlast one or both of its parents. If the polar bear vanishes with the ice, if the grizzly cannot adapt fast enough, perhaps the Grolar will remain. But at what cost? A future where hybrids dominate is a future where diversity has been thinned. The polar bear, symbol of the Arctic, gone. The grizzly titan of the forests, diminished. In their place, a single compromise, struggling to hold on in a broken world. This is the true tragedy of the Grolar Bear. It is not just an animal caught between two worlds. It is the embodiment of a planet caught between what it was and what it is becoming. When we look at the Grolar, we do not just see a hybrid. We see climate change made flesh. We see the fingerprints of humanity pressed into the wild. We see a future where adaptation is not triumph, but survival against odds stacked too high. The Grolar's existence forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. What responsibility do we bear for creating creatures that nature never intended? What duty do we have to protect them, or to restore the parents they came from? Is the hybrid a solution, or is it a warning? These are not questions of biology alone. They are questions of ethics, of philosophy, of humanity's place in the natural order. As the ice continues to melt, as forests creep ever northward, as hybrids appear more often, these questions grow sharper. We cannot look away. The Grolar Bear will not let us. It is here, at the intersection of climate and human impact, that the hybrid becomes more than a curiosity. It becomes a symbol, and symbols demand meaning, But to find that meaning, we must look deeper still, into the way humans tell stories about hybrids, the way science and culture respond, and the way the Grolar Bear reshapes our understanding of nature itself. The Grolar Bear does not live only in the tundra. It lives in our imagination. Every time its strange face appears in a photograph, every time a news story announces its discovery, it sparks something in us. Curiosity, fascination, unease. For centuries, hybrids have occupied a peculiar place in human culture. They are symbols of boundaries crossed, of categories blurred. Ancient myths are filled with hybrid beasts, griffins, centaurs, sphinxes, creatures caught between two worlds, embodying both wonder and danger. The Grolar Bear is no myth, but it carries the same weight. It is real, it breathes, it struggles, and in its existence we find echoes of those old stories. Scientists see the hybrid as a window into evolution. Hybrids test the edges of species. They reveal how close or far apart two animals are, how genes mingle, and how traits collide. The Grolar Bear tells us that polar bears and grizzlies are still closely related, despite hundreds of thousands of years of separation. Their offspring are fertile, a rare case among hybrids. This fact alone raises profound questions. Could growlers represent not just a passing oddity, but the beginning of a new lineage? Could they be a glimpse of the bear of the future? Conservationists, however, view them with caution. Protecting the Grolar Bear means shifting focus away from saving the pure species. To embrace the hybrid is, in some ways, to accept the loss of the polar bear, perhaps even the grizzly. This tension divides opinion. Should we safeguard the hybrids as symbols of adaptation, or should we fight harder to preserve the species that created them? Culturally, the Grolar Bear has become a symbol of climate change. Headlines declare it the poster child of a warming Arctic. Documentaries frame it as proof of ecosystems unraveling. In classrooms, children learn of it as both a curiosity and a warning. The hybrid has become a messenger, not because it is powerful, but because it is vulnerable. And this is where the tragedy lies. The Grolar Bear is not thriving. It is surviving, narrowly, precariously. Its struggles make it an imperfect ambassador, and yet perhaps that is why it resonates so deeply. We recognize in it a reflection of ourselves, caught between past and future, facing changes faster than we can adapt, stumbling forward in a world of our own making. To say it sucks to be a Grolar Bear is not mockery. It is empathy. Imagine being born into a body designed for contradictions, a coat that reveals you in every environment, claws that never quite master the tasks they were shaped for, muscles that tire too quickly, fat that overheats too soon, a life of hunger, of effort, of compromise. And yet, despite this, the Grolar lives. It breathes Arctic air, it roams northern coasts, it raises cubs in a land without certainty. It is not strong because it is perfect. It is strong because it endures in imperfection. For humans, this endurance carries a lesson. We like to believe in sharp categories, species, habitats, borders. But the Grolar Bear reminds us that nature is fluid. It adapts, it blends, it refuses to obey the lines we draw. This fluidity is beautiful, but it is also fragile. Push ecosystems too far, and hybrids appear not as triumphs, but as signs of strain. Some scientists argue the Grolar is a glimpse of evolution in real time, a test of what traits might succeed in a future without stable ice or predictable forests. Others argue it is a dead end, a creature doomed to fade as neither environment fully accepts it. Whichever view proves true, the Grolar forces us to confront the reality of change, and so we return to the question, why does it suck to be a Grolar Bear? Because it is a life without belonging. Because every meal is harder to catch, every climate harsher to endure. Because camouflage fails, because instincts clash, because survival is never certain. Because it is a child of crisis, not of choice. But also because it carries a burden it did not ask for. The burden of being a symbol. A single hybrid bear does not change the fate of the Arctic, but in our eyes it becomes proof of what we have done. Proof that the ice is melting, that the forests are moving, that the old boundaries no longer hold. The Grolar Bear suffers in the wild, but it also suffers in our imagination, where it is made to carry the weight of a world in crisis. And yet, perhaps there is hope in this suffering. If we listen to what the Grolar is telling us, if we see in its struggle the urgency of climate action, then its existence is not in vain. It becomes a teacher, a warning, a call to protect what can still be saved. The fate of the Grolar Bear is tied to the fate of the Arctic. As the ice disappears, so too does the polar bear's world. As the forests shift, so too does the grizzly's. The hybrid, stranded between, tells us plainly, change is here and it is unforgiving. But we are not helpless. The choices we make today, about energy, about conservation, about how we live on this planet, will decide whether the Arctic remains a home for bears at all. The Grolar Bear shows us the cost of inaction. It also shows us the resilience of life, even under pressure. In the end, the story of the Grolar Bear is not just about a hybrid struggling to survive. It is about us. It is about the world we are shaping, the boundaries we are erasing, the future we are writing. So yes, it sucks to be a Grolar Bear. But perhaps, if we pay attention, its struggle will not be wasted. Perhaps it will remind us that we too are caught between worlds, the world we inherited and the world we are creating. And unlike the Grolar, we still have a choice.